One of the things that I really like about Twitter is that you can connect with stories across the world in a different way than is seen in the regular media. The first thing I remember knowing about the shooting of black teenager Michael Brown in Ferguson, Missouri, USA, was photos of clergy in their robes kneeling in the streets at prayer vigils and then kneeling in the streets between police and protesters. These photos kept on popping up on my Twitter feed, and I thought, what is this all about? And then I learnt the story, as we all did. That was back in August, and the photos on the Episcopal Church newsfeed have continued to come, along with descriptions of the actions of many lay people and clergy in Ferguson and now across the United States, as the issues of race and people's rights before the law are debated. And as violence has erupted these last few days in anger at the court decision not to charge the police officer who shot Michael Brown, I've been wondering how the churches in Ferguson would respond to the reading that we've just heard from Mark's Gospel, the reading that we all read on the first Sunday of Advent in this year. Mark says, "In those days the sun will be darkened, and the moon will not give its light. The stars will be falling from heaven, and the powers in the heavens will be shaken." The apocalyptic words that Jesus uses to describe what might happen in the future to the disciples must feel very real for those affected by the riots and those overcome with rage and with grief. Dean Gary Hall, the Dean of Washington National Cathedral, this week quoted Martin Luther King, who said, "A riot is the language of the unheard." A riot is the language of the unheard. Many leaders are trying to offer words of peace and calm and find a way out of the riots and find a way out of a situation that must feel quite apocalyptic. People, though, are going to need to know that there is hope. They're going to need to believe that there are just solutions ahead, or they'll continue to despair, and we all know that despair is what brings on violence. Other parts of the world, hearing the words of the Gospel of Mark this Advent, might know even less hope than the people of Ferguson. There are no church communities left in northern Iraq for the gospel to be proclaimed this Sunday. And I wonder how the lucky few who have escaped to refugee camps will hear this gospel today. They will surely relate very well to the part about the sun and moon being darkened. But will they be able to hear the next part about the fig tree growing leaves as a sign of hope? An indication that summer is coming and that the kingdom of God is near? I think they'll struggle to find that hope. Through Advent, we're going to be focusing on the Christian World Service Christmas appeal, and each Sunday, Christian World Service gives us a different story, and we used part of it in our introduction to the lighting of the candle. Today, they're focusing on life in Gaza, and in particular, training young people in trades. CWS notes that at least these young people will have work because there's so much rebuilding to do in Gaza. This is what they say. "A year ago, Mohammed Essa thought that he had finally made it. Third time lucky, he was accepted into an electrical training program run by the Department of Service to Palestinian refugees. And another young man, also called Mohammed Basha, aged 24, joined him on the course. He already had a degree, but he thought he would get more work as an electrician. Like others in the class, they were eager to begin their learning, hopeful of a normal life. But of course, on July the 8th, that changed. Extensive bombing left Gaza shattered and its citizens struggling to cope. And during the 51-day war, people had to stay home or in overcrowded shelters, and they watched 2,000 people lose their lives. No family was untouched by the trauma. But helping Gaza's young people hold on to their dreams of a normal life is what the Department of Service to Palestinian Refugees is all about. And so, straight after the war was over, the course began again. And sadly, of course, there is more work for these young people now as they have to rebuild Gaza. These two young men are working on building a new electricity supply for their community. They are working in hope that it won't be bombed a second time. Jesus spoke the words that we hear today from Mark, not far from Gaza in Jerusalem, and he spoke the words to the disciples, and they were sitting on the Mount of Olives, and they were looking across the valley to Jerusalem and to the temple which seemed so solid and indestructible. But Jesus was saying to them, it's not going to stay like that. And by the time the gospel writer Mark writes his gospel, he knows what is going to come next, the destruction of the temple in 70 AD, or the potential for it. Scholars dispute whether Mark wrote before 70 AD or just after. It was one or the other. But Mark knows that his community needs to hear that Jesus knew that hard times would come and that they should still live with hope. And living with hope involves watching for signs like the fig tree budding in its leaves, signs of spring and summer, just like we watch for the first Pohutukawa to flower and the first strawberries to be on sale to tell us that Christmas is just around the corner. Signs of life and hope can come in the smallest of ways, and yet in the darkest of times, they can seem really huge and significant. Like people kneeling in prayer between protesters and police, like an Iraqi Christian living for just one more day, and like electricians learning their trade in bombed-out buildings. But what about us? What darkens our moon and our sun, and what brings us hope? We don't have to be embroiled in world events to be feeling worn down by despair. We might be caring for a family member who is seriously ill. We might be worrying about our teenagers and their safety. We might be facing illness ourselves. We might be seeking meaningful work or just any work at all. Our colleagues at the City Mission are bracing themselves for a flood of need at Christmas. All of these things, and many more that you can think of from your lives, might feel pretty apocalyptic. And so we come into Advent to be reminded about hope, to watch for signs of hope, and to be awake and alert. Not like the bumper sticker that says, "Look busy, Jesus is coming," but to open ourselves to Jesus who is already here. Jesus who would be very uninterested in the hype and flurry of Christmas, but very interested in what we see and hear around us that are signs of his presence and that offer us signs of hope. Last night, Stephen and I were privileged to attend the graduation ceremony for an organisation called Be Accessible. And there were 15 people of varying ages, all who have a disability of some kind, who had graduated from this year's leadership program. There were people who were visibly, very seriously disabled in wheelchairs and so on, and others who didn't have any visible disability, but amongst them were hearing impairments and sight impairments, conditions like autism. This course that they had done all year was a huge challenge to them, and it was clear from the presentations that were made how much they had grown and learnt. And we sat there saying to each other, wow, is this a sign of Advent hope or what? it was very moving to be there and to hear some of their stories and to watch the pride of their families, a couple of whom said, we've never had a graduation for this member of our family. And they brought a sure sign of Advent hope breaking in all around us. There's a Twitter and a Facebook campaign called Occupy Advent. And there's another one called Advent Conspiracy. And they encourage us to rebel against the shopping mentality of Christmas. The slogan of the Advent Conspiracy is, Christmas can still change the world. Worship fully, spend less, give more, love all. Worship fully, spend less, give more, love all. Now, I don't want to be the Christmas Grinch. I love the excitement and fun of Christmas as much as anyone, and I bet everyone down at the Santa Parade is having a whale of a time. But we can enjoy our gift giving and our celebrations and our special food while still being really alert to the needs of others and somehow just not letting it take over our lives in a kind of a commercial or personal frenzy. So let's join the Advent conspiracy this Advent. Let's occupy Advent not with that panic of getting everything done before Christmas, but with waiting and watching and noticing. Noticing the leaves on the fig tree or the flowers on the pahutakawa tree. Noticing the signs of life around us. It may be the unexpected love and care of someone that we know. It might be the joy of simply being with friends. It might be the joy of giving to those who have way less than us. It might be taking some time in our own homes to light our own Advent candles or to have a quieter moment of prayer each day. At the end of the service today, I've got a little gift to give each of you, which has some Advent reflections on it. You might like to use that. And be sure to support at least one charity this Christmas. Christian World Service and the envelopes you've been given as you came in. The City Mission Angel Appeal, which we'll be promoting, and we're collecting things for the City Mission each week. Every small contribution that we make makes a real difference. Claim life and hold on to hope as we wait for the coming of the Christ child this Advent season.